Hey everybody, today we're talking about death. Yes, death. I've got an award-winning forensic pathologist by the name of Ryan Blumenthal with me today. Ryan is also a writer and he's written 2 non-fiction books. The first one, called Autopsy, Life in the Trenches with a Forensic Pathologist in Africa. And secondly, Risking Life for Death, Lessons for the Living from the Autopsy Table. In this episode, we do a deep dive into what life is like as a forensic pathologist, the different scenes that Ryan has been exposed to over his 15,000 autopsies. We discuss luck, good and bad, fate. What does he think about fate, coming into contact with death on a daily basis? And we also chat about something called contact theory, which has a fascinating application for our lives and how everything that we come into contact with leaves a trace, and we leave a trace on the person or the thing that we come into contact with that they then take away with them. It's a fantastic way to take and apply what gets discussed in this episode and what Ryan chats about in his books, and to apply that practically to make our lives better, to make the people around us, to make their lives better, and to continue being better people. As always, like, subscribe, share, and enjoy. Ryan Blumenthal, thank you very much for being here. So for the listeners, it's actually such a cool story. This is very impromptu. I went to Exclusive Books yesterday, Exclusive Books La Lucia. I went to go pick up a book, and then there you were doing a book signing, and I came across your books, and I thought, who's this guy? Oh, this is interesting. Let me take a look at these 2 wonderful books that I've read, both of them, which are fantastic. And we got chatting, and before you knew it, 24 hours later, we're on a podcast together chatting about your journey and what your life has been like and what your career has been like. So first of all, thank you for being spontaneous. Thank you for being open to coming here, and it's great to have you.
Well, if you say yes to things, you get adventure, and if you say no to things, you get safety.
Yes.
So I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Absolute pleasure, absolute pleasure. It is amazing to have you on. So, Ryan, first of all, how's the book tour going? It looks very busy, very chaotic, eh?
Look, you make your own luck in life.
Mm.
So I was up here Thursday night to receive a science award, and I thought to myself, I'm going to be up here. Let me make my own luck. And that is what life is about, making your own luck. So I thought to myself, let me put in 2 more days. Spoke to my publicist, and I've had this whirlwind book tour. Literally, the last 48 hours of, you don't want to trace and track me. I've been up and down the coast here, hey.
And what award did you win?
So I won a very prestigious science award called the NRF, the National Research Foundation, which is the most prestigious science foundation in South Africa. And I won their award for the communication of science. So it was, and the award's actually a trip to the USA next year to attend the American Academy of Science conference.
Yes, that's very cool. Eh? Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Is that something that people in the sciences aspire to? Is that was that a goal for you to get an award like that?
Okay, so there's some wisdom here. You should never do anything for awards.
Okay.
I don't respect people that do things for awards. You've got to do stuff for your own reasons. The awards are just by the way.
They're a byproduct of...
Yeah. I was not expecting this. I really, I live my life with the self-belief, and this was just a bonus.
So talking about living your life and doing things for the right reasons, why forensic pathology? Why did you decide to take that route?
Well, I think I'm an uber nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. And I've always... Okay, look, I've studied 23 years. So I started in 93 and finished in 2015. I have 6 degrees. So I've got medicine, law, forensic medicine, forensic pathology, PhD in electrical engineering.
Wowzers.
Yeah, so I've been a bookworm. And also I've got a strong sense of justice and injustice. And I only knew from about my 4th year that I wanted to do forensic pathology. I first thought I'd become a vet. However, I don't think I can deal with putting down puppies and stuff. That would get to me. So I bailed out of veterinary, started medicine, and from my 4th year, I realized I can't do medicine because these people are not that innocent. I was seeing some stuff. I wanted to go to real victims. And then I thought forensic pathology. These are real victims. So I thought this is where I can apply my mind. Speaking for those who cannot speak for themselves.
Okay. There was something that I really enjoyed about your book, a line, I think it was at the end of Autopsy, when you said, "We close the eyes of the dead, but the dead open the eyes of the living." Is that something that drives you? Is that an extension of what you just said now?
Okay, so that quote's from Thomas de Arcy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my quote.
Okay.
However, I must tell you that even though these books are about death, they are actually about life. So the reason I wrote them is because every single case is like a story to tell. And I just felt it my duty to share these stories with the living, if we can learn from their mistakes or what happened, and live better lives ourselves. And, South Africa comes from a dark past. You couldn't talk about these cases. So the first book I wrote as an autobiography, part memoir. So I thought if I do that, I'd get into less trouble, because I'm basically talking about myself. However, I snuck in some cases here and there.
Yeah.
And these books are not about the cases, so I'm not sensationalizing the cases. You'll see that both these books are actually a philosophy that comes, it's about how to think like a medical detective and how to live perhaps a bit better so that you can be a bit happier, grow old a bit better, and ultimately provide me with less work.
Yes. You mentioned in South Africa that there's a lack of forensic pathologists, right?
Yeah. So South Africa has got about 70 to 80 forensic pathologists for a population of 63 million. We have about 600,000 natural deaths a year. These don't get autopsies. And we've got about 72,000 unnatural deaths per year. So this equates to about 450 to 650 autopsies per person per year. So ultimately, South Africa needs 300 forensic pathologists. 150, I think, just to start playing the game. And currently, we've got between 70 and 80.
Wow.
Yeah. So we overworked.
So how long, on average, I know it depends patient to patient, but on average, how long does one autopsy take?
Well, this is the thing about forensic pathology. It's not like clinical medicine, because clinical medicine, you can triage cases. You can airway, breathing, circulation. Some cases are more extreme than others. Whereas forensic, you don't know what you're going to get. The most simplest case can end up very complex, and the most complex case can end up very simple. It really is a speciality, and it can present to you as one thing, and you can find something completely different. So the answer is actually it depends.
Okay. As a lot of answers do, especially, funnily enough, in the sciences, coming from a fitness background and training people and exercise science, very often it's the same answer. People ask me questions. Well, it depends. Fantastic. So you studied for an extensive period of time. I loved in the first book, there it is, Autopsy, the one on the left-hand side. You tell a fantastic story about when you were in Maputo and the tropical storm Irina came through, and then you were stuck there. Yeah. And you were the only doctor at the hospital, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, and what did you learn about yourself from that experience?
Well, lucky this rookie junior doctor, they sent us, we were of the first people to be posted into rural areas as doctors in South Africa. I was posted at a hospital called Maputo Malachi Hospital in Palabora.
Mm-hmm.
And, medicine is this see one, do one, teach one philosophy. That's how medicine is actually trained, the practical aspects of it. And one night, I remember being called for a cesarean section. A woman had cephalopelvic disproportion, so her baby was stuck, couldn't come out, and she needed a cesarean section. And literally, I saw it was raining, and I realized like it was raining quite hard, and there was supposed to be another doctor that was supposed to help me with the anesthetic. And what happened that night was literally a one-man show. It was anesthetic, operation, pediatrics, no lights, using laryngoscope blades. They called the baby Mametse, which means miracle. That was a stressful evening. And I was trapped there for 2 days, waiting for the water to subside, and there was also many other patients. It's a 200-bed hospital. So I've just got flashbacks of all this. You learn a lot about yourself.
What did you learn about yourself?
Well, firstly, a lot of the stuff that came in, was from makeshift houses, whereas the traditional houses made out of mud and thatch actually survived the storm, whereas those that used that aluminium, makeshift, those collapsed and broke arms and stuff. So the traditional wisdom from our grandmothers and grandfathers is real wisdom, not modern day wisdom. So you got to listen to your grandparents, they're wise.
Okay.
And somehow you find out your limits in extremes. Like, I never thought I went into medicine for that. And that's why one of my favorite books is The Story of Saint Michel, because it's about a doctor in the time of cholera or a doctor in turbulent times. I love that book. That book is one of the most inspirational books. I've read it 6 times. Because these are turbulent times, and you have to provide hope like a lighthouse in tough times for everyone, yourself and those around you.
Sure. Yeah, that I was gripped by that part of the story, because sometimes life throws us these curveballs, and you find yourself in a position where it's sink or swim. Excuse the pun, given the fact that it was a tropical storm at that stage. As you delve deeper into the book Autopsy, there's lots of different little nuggets of information, almost like the did you know sections on the back of a chappie's wrapper. That was sort of how I thought about it at the time. I was like, oh wow, that is so interesting and very relevant, and you can understand it as a South African. So like, for example, when you spoke about what you find in people's pockets, and if I'm not mistaken, you said that one of the most common things you find in people's pockets is Zambuck.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, firstly, I need to commend you. I mean, you read both books in 24 hours. Firstly, I found this phenomenal. I have utmost respect for that.
I'm also a nerd.
Yeah, I'm astounded. And also that you read it so critically. So I need to acknowledge this.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, look, it's edutainment. I work in a mortuary. I don't see humans eye to eye. It's me and the body and my team. Sometimes I go to death scenes, and generally you get a lot of time to think when you become quite philosophical. People die that are highly motivated. In my second book, I talk about someone that was buying chinos, trousers, for 999 Rand. They got killed in a pedestrian vehicle accident. Another guy bought flowers for his lover, and then he was killed with the bouquet of flowers. And this wakes people up, shakes you up, because we are caught up in trifles in life. So amidst the whole philosophy that goes through this book, also there's a lot of edutainment. It's designed to emotionally hook the reader, and it's not about me, it's about the reader.
Yes, I got that. And you've alluded to it a couple of times in both books, how you and your team keep sane is sometimes through a little bit of humor, because I can imagine it must be the emotional and the mental toll that it must take to do a job that you do, and the things that you see. I can imagine it must take its toll.
I think we're quite well balanced. We choose the right people. It's about professionalism. You can ask the same thing of any profession: pediatric surgery, ENT, neurosurgeon. At the end of the day, you want the right people, you want to train them well, and it's how you go into a field that will determine your entire experience of that field. So you've got to be trained right. You need the right mentors, tormentors. You need to have the right teachers in life. That is critical because input equals output. I find the problem nowadays is people want the output without the input. So from training and gym, you don't just get the results. There has to be input.
Exactly. And consistent action over time. There is no quick fix for anything that's worth having. Anyway, anything that's worth having, there's no quick fix. One of the stories, the case studies that stood out in the first book was a body that had 70 kgs of maggots. Is that possible? Is that right?
Yeah.
70 kgs? And there was cocaine, and the maggots were like hyperactive. I'm paraphrasing, but is that correct?
Yeah, you get what's known as super maggots.
Yeah.
You can literally diagnose them off their. So this field is all about. Okay, look, Sherlock Holmes popularized the word observation. I want to popularize the word noticing.
Okay.
Noticing is far superior to observation, I think, because observation is a bit passive, whereas noticing, you literally actively notice things. And from everything, from the way the maggots are twitching and jumping, they literally become hyperactive and they grow. And 70 kilograms, there's probably even more. You get maggot masses. They go around, stab wounds, they help you diagnose. They exude heat.
Yeah.
You literally can feel the warmth of the body from this maggot mass. That literally snaps, crackles, and pops. You can hear it and feel it, and it radiates.
Seriously?
Yeah, no, it's Jurassic Park stuff sometimes. This is Africa.
It is Africa. How long does that take before, that amount of maggots, that sheer weight of maggots, how long does it take before it gets that big?
Well, the best way to decontaminate a body in Africa, and this is from maggots or chemicals or any substance, is what we call the green water snake method. The hose pipe.
Yeah.
This is the way we decontaminate bodies in Africa. Hose pipe and time. We just
hose
wash
pipe
them
it down.
away. Yeah.
And so you find a body that's got 70 kgs worth of maggots. How long has it been there for, being unattended to, for it to get to that amount?
Well, so I try to simplify time since death in my book. Look, it is a massive topic. There's textbooks this thick on thanatology, which is the science of time since death.
Okay.
So for your listeners, very briefly, a body is warm and flaccid. Then it becomes warm and stiff.
Okay.
Then it becomes cold and stiff. Then it becomes cold and flaccid. And this happens over 36 hours. That's the early postmortem phases. Then autolysis happens. This is like where cells burst and you get like enzymes like your pancreas that starts dissolving things. And then you get the stage of green putrefaction where the body's generally green. Then you get the stage of black putrefaction where the body's generally black. And then depending on the environment, if it's hot or cold or dry or humid, you get adipocere formation, which is death wax, or you get mummification, and then skeletonization. So it depends on the environment, if the body dies under an air conditioner, under a fan. And we've got formulas called like Hengzi's nomogram. We look at temperatures, we look at rigor mortis, we look at lavore mortis, we look at the insects, we look at vitreous humor in the eye. We've got formulas like Sterner's and Madea's formula. We take the fluid from the eye, we suck it up and send it to the lab and get the potassium value and put it in this formula, and it can tell you time since death in hours. It's not just getting to the scene and just, kicking the body and saying like, this is, the body died at 5:47 yesterday, your magistrate. That's pure mythology from TV. It's a science, thanatology.
Wow.
So it depends.
It depends, yes. As all good answers, it depends. You've written these two books, but I listened to another podcast that you were on, and you wrote some fiction books as well. Yep. What is it about writing that you enjoy so much? Because, this is your 6th or 7th book now?
Yeah. May I just say that all my fiction novels fail dismally?
Yes.
They are relegated to the bottom of some second-hand bookstore gathering dust.
Well, you never know. Maybe they're these relics that have come forward and they're going to be bestsellers one day. You don't know.
Well, look, the empty page always listens. It is therapy. There's so much that I see that has to be shared. Like I feel compelled to share this information. I'm still a doctor. I see myself as a public health expert. There's stories in here that can help people live better lives, become a little happier, grow old a bit better, and not end up on my table. So I just felt compelled to write this. So it's part of me, and it doesn't feel like work, when I'm writing, you go into this deep state of free flow state. It's like when you're training, like
in the zone.
Time disappears.
Yeah.
You're just in this free flow, white hot writing state, and even you have to like sit back and like, did I come up with this? Like, where does this come from, man? It's a good feeling.
Oh, it's like a form of therapy, basically.
Better than therapy.
Really, Unreal. Absolutely unreal. You said good forensics need to be skeptics. Would you consider yourself a skeptic outside of your career?
Right. So my hobby is sleight of hand magic. I don't know if you know this. I've been luck to about 6 world champs. I've studied sleight of hand, misdirection, and we have to know how magicians fool people. And in my book, I discussed the perfect murder, and I basically used sleight of hand magic theory to answer that. What is the perfect murder? So you've got to assume they know all the answers and all the methods, and you've got to assume that they're cleverer than you. I mean, this is basic Penn and Teller fool us,
okay,
which I just applied to murder, because this is how you've got to know what's out there, and you've got to know what they know. And if it's like they fool us, then they fool us and they win the prize, like Penn and Teller fool us. So it's the same kind of mindset, I think.
All right. So when you speak about living your best life and educating people, especially in South Africa where we've got a very strong drinking culture, what are your thoughts from your experiences and what you've had to deal with in your career? What are your thoughts and views on alcohol compared to other drugs?
Okay, I've got quite a bit to say about alcohol.
Hit me with the music.
Right, firstly, what is the definition of an alcoholic according to me?
Okay.
It's if you go to a bar or a liquor store and they know your name.
Yes.
And you've never been to that bar or that liquor store. It's quite funny.
I think that's
no, but more seriously though. So, look, doctors have their definition of alcoholism. They've got the cage criteria. Do you ever have to cut down? Do you get annoyed? Do you feel guilty about your drinking? Do you need an eye opener? The message that I got across in my book is, if you think you are drinking the finest alcohol money can buy in crystal goblets, or if you're drinking the cheapest stuff out of a brown paper bag, don't fool yourself. Alcohol is alcohol. Another thing, I go deeper into alcohol. During the pandemic, people were making their own alcohol, and I was seeing a lot of deaths because everyone claims to be an expert and they know how to brew their own stuff. They don't. I saw a lot of deaths from methanol and the byproducts of alcohol. And let's actually talk addictions, because it's just another form of addiction. So during the pandemic, I saw trends of which addicts weren't getting their fixes. And alcohol is but a form of addiction. So you can just put your fix in there, whatever it is, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever.
Yes.
Addiction's addiction. And there's a lot of people suffering addiction out there. And it's like training or anything. This is something that has to be, it's a battlefront of life.
Yeah.
It has to be managed. You got to know what your addiction is, though. And the thing is, these things are insidious. They always start slow, and then before you know it, you're hooked.
The people that come across your table, unfortunately, how much, if you had to put it in a percentage terms, approximately, is it alcohol fueled or alcohol related, or they had been drinking at the time of their passing.
All right, so in my book, I give the example of someone lying on my table, and I comment to my technical assistant, this person made some bad choices in life. Because we discuss low cards exchange principle, every contact leaves a trace. So whatever you do in life will leave its traces on you. So as they're lying there, I can see scars, I can see needle puncture marks, even alcohol leaves signs on the body. There's blatant signs and there's subtle signs. And it depends on intensity, duration, and nature of contact. How hard, how long, and what kind of contact they had. Everything you do in life leaves traces on you. Even the singular indiscretion leaves traces on you. This is what it takes to be a good forensic pathologist. So we see these things.
How much can you tell from a person when you meet them? Because I found that particularly interesting. You referenced it in autopsy, and then you also, in Risking Life or Death, you mentioned that you could tell a lot about somebody by how they shake your hand as well. So tell me a little bit about that. Give me an example of a case study. What could you deduce from meeting somebody without having to ask them any questions?
Okay, firstly, we're living in very dangerous times. You don't just go up to someone and diagnose. They'll just take you down.
I'm sure.
And then I'm still a doctor, and is it my duty to tell them, listen, get that mole checked out, because that mole looks dangerous? And how do you do this in a nice way without offending them? You go up to someone like that mole,
Yeah.
like, you better check it out. But yeah, my eyes trained, I don't know if I'm on the spectrum with autism, I don't know. There's something here, but like when I meet someone, before I've even made eye contact, my eyes darted around their whole body, from the pathology of clothing. The clothes tell so much. To their tattoos, to their skin texture, to their dermatology, to their habitus. Everything is communicating with me, and it sounds like profiling, although all doctors do this. Because to be a good doctor, there must be no judgment. Someone can come in and talk to the doctor for an hour and not give the diagnosis. And then as they leave, it's called the doorknob diagnosis, they may tell you, you've got to cut through all this stuff and actually find out what's going on. You've got to know. You've got to understand humans and how they tick and what's going on behind the scenes. And there's predictable crises of adult life. So, a person 30 to 35, male or female, has got certain predictable crises for that age group, between 35 and 40, 40 and 45. And these are not new, because we fit into society and there's certain expectations of people. So, I know it sounds like profiling, but if someone's lying on my table, you've got to have what's known as pre-autopsy. So you've got to predict what you think you're going to find. We've got protocols. However, you've got to know, this person has certain risks for this person. So, and it happens after 15,000 autopsies. You start to see patterns.
That's how many you've done?
That's roughly where I'm roughly now.
15,000.
Yeah.
So what are the predictable crises for people that are 30 to 35? Because I'm 33, heading on 34.
Well, it depends also which culture you are. It depends on so many things, where you're living. Mm-hmm. If someone's from some tribe in a forest, they got different, and I try and address this in my epilogue. And I try to keep it more broad brushstrokes. It goes very technical.
Yes.
So what I discuss in the epilogue, from having read hundreds of suicide notes, is that there's literally 3 reasons why people kill themselves: work, health, relationship problems. And I call these the 3 battlefronts of life. And everything can be squeezed into these 3 battlefronts, from your in-laws to your hay fever. And it's these 3 battlefronts that trend in different parts of your life. So as you get older, the health battlefront becomes more important. When you're younger, it's the relationship battlefront. Financials, I think, the whole way through. The whole way through. So, and there's different battlefronts that become more important in different phases of your life. And then in my book, I discuss low cards exchange principle, contact theory, and how these may influence your battlefronts, your choices you're making in life. It will cause you either to be happier or sadder, be healthier or unhealthier, to grow old better or worse, or end up, unnatural death.
Yeah. You've seen, undoubtedly, a lot. You must have seen people that have survived when they shouldn't have, and you would have seen people that have died when the odds were 1 in 100,000, 1 in a million. Do you believe in fate?
Right, so just to contextualize your answer from a forensic pathological point of view, sometimes the body's very robust, sometimes it's very fragile. I've seen people shot multiple times and survive, and then I've seen someone get what's known as a dinky puff punch to the head or chest, and they have commotio cordis, commotio cerebri, and they just drop dead, or they got egg, shell, skull, and they just, like, from minimal blunt force trauma, die. Like, their predisposition, it's unbelievable. So sometimes the body's very strong and sometimes it's very weak. And this does cause some philosophical thinking at times. So regarding your question, do I believe in fate? Sure. As I started off this interview, I say I believe you make your own luck in life. You make your own luck in life. That is one of my big statements.
Yes.
Like, literally, I am here today because I think I'd started the initial domino of this rally that brought me here today. We've never met. I think you create your own fate in life.
Okay.
You create your own luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Through your own unique perspective, you get to see the world through a very different lens to most people. If there was one piece of advice you could give everybody, what would you say, and what piece of advice would you give?
Sure. I think that you put too much confidence in this mere mortician here. Read my books.
Yeah. Well, you give, is it 10 things in autopsy at the end there? Yeah. What would you say? Well, what would you say the one thing is that people underestimate the value of that your career has brought forward to be something that you shouldn't take for granted or shouldn't overestimate?
Well, in autopsy, I give dating advice, for example, dating advice from the autopsy table, which I thought was quite a cool thing. And all the stuff is based on the shoulders of giants. This is not entirely my own stuff.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of books, and a lot from the 1920s and 30s and ancient literature that survives through time. So my dating advice, I give 4 pieces of advice to people. Like, do not date or marry until you've seen them drunk, until you've seen them angry, what they've spent their money on, and how they spend their leisure time. Because once you know those 4 things, there's nowhere left to hide.
Yes.
So I think that's wise to really, and you can even do that on yourself and understand yourself better. How do you act when you're drunk? How do you act when you're angry? How are you spending your leisure time? What are you spending your money on? That will cut through all the stuff and just tell you who you are. But one singular piece of advice, I think notice is the word. Noticing yourself, noticing the world, noticing others. It's a very active form of awareness, noticing.
Yeah. And mindfulness.
Yeah.
So much as I've learned in my journey through self-discovery and through reading, and a lot of these books here speak about it as well, about being in the present. There is no future. There's just the present, and the present just continues to happen all the way throughout your life. Sure, it's not about living in the moment and just, with a careless and reckless abandon. You can plan for the future to stack the deck in your favor, but in doing so, you still need to be incredibly present and incredibly mindful of being in that moment, which is something that you mentioned actually earlier in your writing. That's what your writing gives you. It gives you that sensation of being incredibly present. You mentioned that sometimes you get out the lab and you go to a death scene. What stories come to mind that you are, of course, able to share with me?
Well, I would like to, if I may, just touch on this present, past, future that you alluded to, because I think this is very powerful, the power of now.
Yes.
And look, your past context you can do nothing about. It's happened, make peace with it, it's done. And their traces will be left upon you, whatever happened. As you say, your present context and your future context are very important, because this will affect your life, your happiness, and your philosophy for growing older. So, and you must notice what you're coming into contact with. Every pollen grain. I give a story in my book about a young man that dies from a single fang of a black mamba. And this was 2 years of work, because we found out that it wasn't the venom that killed him. The snakes had been expressing venom which had dried as a substrate on the glass of their cages, and then aerosolized or lyophilized, and he breathed it in, and it sensitized his immune system through his nasal mucosa. And it was the single-fanged, like needle prick of the tooth that caused a massive anaphylactic reaction. So he was having exposure and contact without being aware of it before the time, and his body was reacting to that. So, these things happen on levels that sometimes we're not even aware of. So that was 2 years of work for that case.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's in the second book.
What is the, and let's use that as a specific example. What is the incentive, for the want of a better word, what's the motivator for persevering through 2 years on that particular case? Is it closure to the loved ones? Is it, your passion and you knowing that you've closed that chapter and that particular work venture?
Well, I learned this through Pitt Bielefeld, actually. I worked with him. When do you close a case? When are you finished? How do you know it's done? And literally in his book, he talks about when he gets the car key back, he actually goes to the car and sees if this is the key for that car. And then you can't assume that this is the key for the car. You've got to close the case off. So when this case happened, to my mind, a single fang needle prick to the index finger. There's 2 little arteries on either side. I know black mambas are venomous. Are they that venomous, and can that be injected into a small little artery? So to me, I thought, no way. Something else is afoot here. And it just didn't make sense to me. And this led to, as I said, 2 years of work, speaking to experts around the world. And then eventually I met this venomologist from Australia, and we worked out through many emails and discussions how this could have happened from a pathophysiological point of view. And then I felt comfortable after this.
So did you continue with your work, your day-to-day work, and then how did that case work out? Did you come back to it every time when you got a free moment? You continued to invest time and energy communicating with other experts? Is that how it went down for those 2 years?
Well, this is why you need knowledge and experience. You need to know, is this case finished or is it not? This is tough. Could this case be part of a serial killer? Could this be part of other cases? It's about pattern recognition. It's also about a nagging internal desire. Something, I know this sounds like intuition, but there's just, it just doesn't make sense. And there's this hunger to solve this, and you know that this is not the end, and there must be something more to this. So, and it requires knowledge and reading. And if something doesn't make sense, no one's going to solve this besides you. And you've got to also know your limits of your responsibilities and abilities. I realized I have to consult out here. So I've got other experts involved. So it's a personal thing. And in my book, I talk about publication of rare cases, because we know it's normal. Even though someone's never hanged themselves in the past, they hang themselves. We know what a normal, typical hanging looks like. And if it doesn't look like a typical hanging, the red lights go off. Something's afoot here. So it's like, once again, sleight of hand magic. We know what a normal person dealing cards looks like. And if someone's second dealing cards, there's a slight, unless they're so good, you don't know that they're second dealing. You've got to see thousands of people dealing cards normally. So it's that kind of mindset.
Before you notice the difference.
Yeah.
That's Sure. That's a testament also to your character. You know, that you were something, like you said, something wasn't 100% and it didn't sit well with you that you didn't, that there was something that wasn't right, which is obviously one of the reasons why you've been so successful and you receive awards, even though that's not the goal. But nobody's forcing you to, and nobody's forcing you to look into that case further and research it and to collaborate with other experts for 2 years. You know, that's something that you've done from the corner of your little piece of the world in your lab.
Well, I would disagree with you about success, because, you know, what you think is successful may not be successful. So I, maybe on my work battlefront, I'm successful. My other battlefronts, I may not be successful. You know, you keep your head down, you work. By the time you lift your head up, everyone's gone. You know, you're at the top of the mountain. You're making snowballs all by yourself. You're making a snowman all by yourself. There's no one to share your success with. Is that success? I mean, you sacrifice so much. And then also, because you're working so hard, your health goes. Like, literally, sitting is the new smoking. Like, sitting destroys a body. Like, literally, I'm 49 now. My eyesight's gone. Like, literally, like, I need reading glasses. And working under fluorescent lights, it decimates a body. So this is not success, as far as I'm concerned. Successful is 3 battlefronts. And, yeah, our private, nature doesn't care about our private logic. That's one of my big quotes.
I was going to come back. I was coming to that.
I don't think I'm successful. I just want to put this out there.
No, sure. I was going to come to that with risking life or death at the end. That was one of the things that spoke to me. So whilst we're on the topic, tell me about that. Private logic.
So, okay, I'm going to not mince my words here. I will tell you straight out what I think. So, a lot of our ideas are not our own ideas. We've been processalized. It's like a salesman. Are you really buying that because you want this, or were you sold this by a salesman? So too with ideas and ideologies. I'm sorry to say this, but some people are not that clever to come up with these ideas themselves. They've been processalized. There's narratives. There's stuff that's trending. And what is trending depends on the intensity, duration, and nature of what's trending and people's proclivity to being influenced. They did not come up with these ideas themselves. There's stuff that's trending, and then they buy into this, and they groomed or whatever, and then they take on this ideology or idea. So it's all low cards exchange principle. And unfortunately, like even Disney and Hollywood have tinkered with us. There are some people that think that real love is like a hand coming down a window, like in the Titanic.
Yes.
Other people think that real love is a single strand of spaghetti being sucked up by 2 dogs. That is not real love. Real love is the joys and sorrows of life. And how many crimes I've seen committed in the name of love. So, and then I mention nature does not care about your private logic. Inexorable millennia of time before us. You just have to watch Animal Planet, David Attenborough. We're mammals, when all is said and done. And now you get people that don't want to follow the natural order of things. So this is their private logic. Nature doesn't care about it. The genes will be wiped out. Yeah.
Inconsequential, yeah. One of the things that I didn't see this book going, Autopsy, I didn't think that blockchain technology was going to end up in a book like this. And you spoke about blockchain technology and how it can be used for the betterment in the context of essentially health economics is the term that you used. Can you elaborate on that? Because that's fascinating.
Well, look, I'm just going to keep this. I'm a forensic pathologist. I'm not a technological guy, but I do discuss AI. I do discuss ChatGPT. I discuss the future of the death industry, and we've got tools now, deep fakes, and you can talk to, your loved ones. You can even think that they're still alive. They'll have the exact voice, the exact consciousness. You can have a discussion. Meanwhile, they could be dead. So technology is definitely coming here. It's definitely going to play a role. We must use technology to make our lives easier. However, there's a paradox here. So, for example, all this technology helped make our lives easier, like washing machines, etc. However, it didn't. because like you actually want cleaner shirts more often, so you end up using the washing machine more often, and your time actually gets less and less. Emails were supposed to save time, meanwhile they take more time. So there's this paradox happening with technology. So yeah, and I once again just revert to the knowledge of our grannies and grandpas. They were wise. We have to like listen to the elders, eh?
Yeah. You spoke about different types of justice as well in your book. Is that something that drives you, the need for justice? In this instance, in a criminal sense, is that something that you're passionate about, bringing people to justice for what they've done and the people that's come across your table as a result?
Yeah, I've got a strong sense of justice and injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And the bioethical principle is distributive justice. And I give examples here which mess with people's minds.
Yeah.
As to how one would do the autopsy on a famous person versus like a homeless person. And I've got a lot of views on this about like what's happening in societies with divisive talk. And, you know, I've studied genocides and how one vulnerable group gets more attention than another vulnerable group. So a lot of money and resources go to looking at, for example, one vulnerable group, and then another vulnerable group gets totally ignored. So, for example, in our country, there's a lot of attention to child abuse and, you know, gender-based violence.
Yes.
No one mentions the elderly. You know, the elderly are a whole population. There's no cheerleaders for the elderly. And then I've got this YouTube channel, Ryan Blumenthal channel, and I give this talk on equality, real equality, because under my knife, like, you're all equal. You know, I will do a TikToker with 1 billion views. Anybody, I will do that autopsy the same. If it's a very high-profile person, you know, I'll just do the autopsy a little slower. But they all get the same autopsy, the same standard.
Yes.
So, and I give an example. For example, you know, if you kill a woman, it's called femicide. What do you call it if you kill a man?
Murder.
Now you see, no one knows. Judges don't know.
Mm.
And because it's not trending.
Yeah.
So do you know what the answer is?
What's the answer?
Androcide.
Androcide.
Yeah. But it's not trending. Meanwhile, it's trending big time where I work. And
male on male violence.
Well, so these are called gendercides. So, and it actually implies motive. It means they're killing you because of your gender. And these are actually rare. And the only way you know motive is once it's been through the courts. That's why I call it homicide. Like, just generally, whether it's male, female, trans, whatever, it's homicide. So as soon as you start focusing on a group, other groups get less attention. And it causes divisiveness. And that is a problem. So we've got to learn this lesson. We are, you know, when, like, if you're talking real justice, real equality, then, you know, it's homicide.
So to play devil's advocate, a feminist, or some instances a feminazi, if they've been called, the extreme feminists, I would say to you, well, the reason why it's been given a term and it's being shed some light is because previously it wasn't, and there were lots of injustices done to females that weren't reported, and it was swept under the rug, and that's the reason why it's getting attention now. Is that, would you say that's a valid argument, or is it still, it's not in line with being equal all the way throughout?
So, look, my answer is there's lobbyists for causes. Some people have louder voices than others. All I'm saying is that there are other groups that aren't getting these cheerleaders. And to me, this is a problem. So, like, once again, no one's talking for the elderly. So, yeah, that's my views on equality.
Okay. You mentioned you can get a good sense of the health of a nation through what comes across your table. How healthy, in your opinion, from what you've seen in recent years, is South Africa?
All right, so we can tell a lot by what's happening on the streets from our autopsy table. We can tell you if a new gang has moved into a neighborhood. We can tell you if there's a new or emergent drug or disease. We can tell you the health of the nation. So, for example, anterior abdominal fat wall thickness. It's increasing here in South Africa. Like, I'm seeing 4 to 6 centimeter anterior abdominal fat wall thicknesses Is that normal? What's baseline? This is worrying, like chronic carbohydrate poisoning I'm seeing.
Chronic carbohydrate poisoning.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that? What is?
Well, we're eating a lot of processed carbs, and you can see the effects on people. And the health of the nation, like if you start seeing multiple shootings, we call them multiples, something's going on out there. If I'm seeing a lot of interpersonal violence, if I'm seeing a lot of skeletons and decomposed bodies, like lonely people that no one's finding, this tells me something's afoot in society. No one's finding all these lonely people. So you're getting a good sense of what's happening in society, just from our autopsy table. So the metaphor I use is a panel beater.
Okay.
Even though the panel beater is not at the scene of the accident, you can say what happened, if this car was T-boned or had a head-on-head or rollover, just from the panel beating. So you get a sense of what's happening, just the numbers, the violence of the crime. You get a sense of the health of the nation.
Has the violence of the crime increased over the last few years, in your opinion?
Well, for this, once again, we're talking baselines. Mm-hmm. And the metaphor I use is like if you speak to your grandfather and they said, like, when he was young, he used to just put the bucket into the water and pull out a whole lot of fish. Then you speak to his grandfather and he says, we didn't even put the bucket in the water. The fish just jumped in the boat. So it's called shifting baseline syndrome.
Okay.
If you really want to go and look, may I suggest you go look in the archives of the old high courts, like in Bloemfontein, etc., and you look through the books and see what was being arrested then, for stealing of a loaf of bread. And, if you're stealing for food, I've got no problem with that, eh?
Yeah.
But if you're stealing for greed and murdering people for a cell phone or for R2 or something like that, something's changed in the mores of society.
The last few years have been hectic globally since COVID, and we've had our personal challenges here in KZN. But what was COVID like for you? I mean, that must have been something that was completely just insane, for the want of a better word.
Well, that's why I mentioned this book, The Story of Saint Michel, by Axel Munthe. Fantastic book, read it 6 times, about a doctor during the time of cholera, being a doctor in turbulent times. So a lot of my colleagues and myself worked as essential workers through COVID. We didn't know what this thing was. We lost colleagues, we lost friends, we lost family. These were tough times. And all I can talk about is the forensic pathology of COVID, because from my autopsy table, I was seeing 5 trends. So I saw a lot of suicides. The youngest was 7. Hanging was the way to go. I saw a lot of interpersonal violence, because there was nowhere left to run and hide. Partners came face to face with each other. I was seeing an increase in addicts, like they weren't getting their fixes of alcohol or drugs. I was, for some unknown reason, seeing an uptick in road traffic fatalities as we were coming out of the waves. People forgot how to drive. And then finally, I was seeing an increase in skeletons and decomposed bodies, all these lonely people in their flats or apartments that no one was finding. So that's the forensic pathology of COVID.
That's very sad, particularly the loneliness one. There's a lovely book, Brené Brown, called The Atlas of the Heart, and she's got a PhD, and I can't remember what exactly it is, but they study emotions, and she cited a study regarding loneliness, and I can't remember the context or the exact, so I am paraphrasing, but it's loneliness shortens your lifespan significantly, more so than things that you would think would be obvious lifespan or life expectancy shorteners. And that was a massive takeaway from that book, is how loneliness can affect your health.
So I call it tech-induced loneliness. Mm-hmm. Once again, because the world's become so technologically advanced now, you just dial something and they come and deliver your food, or you shop online, so there's no more interaction like in the villages of old. So that's dangerous. People are becoming more and more isolated. Tech-induced loneliness. And another thing we're seeing, like just speaking of the tech industry, there's a new pathological diagnosis now these tech people get. It's called e-thrombosis. Have you heard of the term?
E-thrombosis.
Yeah.
No.
So it's from sitting and coding, hours and hours, these data analysts. They literally get deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, and die. Long-haul truck drivers get it. There's risk factors for deep venous thrombosis, although this is a new diagnosis in medicine, e-thrombosis, and it's literally that industry, these e-workers, e-thrombosis.
Wow. That's intense. And that just shows you the extent to which our society has changed and the workspace. And now even with Zoom and with Teams and those types of things, there's even less reason for you to get up and go and visit somebody at their place of work to go and have a meeting.
Well, that's why my epilogue, I think, is so powerful, because this new world, this new brave world that we're going into, where everything's done for us, robotics, and how are we going to spend all this extra time? We're going to have 1 million north-facing flats, and we're just going to move around with the sunlight. What is a proper, healthy life? I ask those questions. Like, how do you spend your retirement and your end years? There's this Forever Young movement, I'm sure you've seen. People going for Botox and fillers, and they partying like into their 80s and 90s. I don't know what your views are on that, but did nature intend us to be forever young? We don't know. And another thing is, what is a good life, actually? You can start becoming quite philosophical about this. What is a good society in which to live? And I worry, as I put in my book, that people are becoming more isolated, and there's no more this community, going to talk to your grocer, which was a schlep back in the day. However, that schlep is important. You need to talk to that grocer. It can be the highlight of your day.
Exactly. If I'd ordered the book that I was looking for originally online and to get it delivered to the gym, then I wouldn't have gone to Exclusive Books yesterday. I wouldn't have gotten a conversation with you. I wouldn't have bought those 2 books and read them, and then I wouldn't have had you on the show now today.
Precisely. It's been enriching.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. So when you speak about e-thrombosis and environmental diseases or illnesses, what are the risks associated with your job?
All right, so I too am the end result of all my contacts in life. Mm-hmm. And my book is a masterclass in low cards exchange principle. Every contact leaves a trace. If you go to a death scene, you leave something there, or you take something with you. And I argue in my book, the argument is so strong, because it's actually all about the epilogue, but I'm building this strong argument through the book that is inescapable by the time you get to that epilogue. It's concrete. So I've set you up, I've schooled you, and then it's about the epilogue, and then it's inescapable. The argument, there's this thread running through, and I prove that health, relationships, and work are affected by contact theory. You are the end result of all your contacts. Your contacts make you who you are. They also constrain who you could have become. It will affect your happiness, the way you grow old. Everything is contact theory, every pollen grain. And so you ask me now about my life and what I'm coming in to contact you. And everyone has their risks. Every field has its risks depending on its context. So the e-thrombosis person, that's their hazards, that's their risks sitting. I've got my risks and hazards, of which I discuss in the book. If you're collecting bat dung in the caves for fertilizer, you've got certain risk factors like cryptosporidium. So you've got to know your risks for your work that you've chosen. And that's why forensic pathologists, you need an idea of highway design, of people's folkways, the risks and hazards of every profession. All of these things you need to have this medical detective mindset for.
Yeah. You mentioned in the book a couple of those instances, like digging into people's pockets and the risks that are associated with what might be there. Something as extreme as what's inside a person's stomach, such as explosives, as an example. So, excuse me, those are a couple of things that did you have to deal with personally, or was this colleagues of yours?
Well, I discuss rookie mistakes in the book. So you never put your hand in a pocket. There could be open needles, syringes. You never know what's in a pocket. A tissue where they've coughed up blood with tuberculous bacilli. We've seen fully cocked and loaded guns fall out of pockets, sharps, knives. And in some countries, they want to hurt medical personnel. There may be explosives in the body. So it's by the grace of God that you go into an autopsy, and that's why we want to diminish risk as much as possible. So our bodies are usually x-rayed before we commence. There's cases of colleagues and friends that have been injured, and I give plenty of examples of the book. For example, if you cut open the stomach, if they've drank potassium cyanide, they get overcome with hydrogen cyanide gas. We've had veterinary pathologists that have got a drop of horse blood into their mouth, and then they die of fatal glanders. We've had human forensic pathologists that were doing an autopsy on someone with cellulitis of the leg, and then they cut themselves and they developed cellulitis and died. And HIV lives for 16.5 days after death. COVID lives for 35 hours in the nasopharynx after death. So there's high risk stuff, and then you get prions. All of these can injure and affect people. And there's a chronic exposure to death and dying.
Is there a particular body or patient, I should say, that you would be most cautious with, keeping your own personal safety in mind? So could be COVID, could be Ebola, could be whatever.
Well, that is what I argue in this book, because you never know what you're going to get. I mean, this is Africa. Our borders are patent. You never know. This could be any highly dangerous hemorrhagic fever. It's literally like, by the grace of God, we want to try and diminish the risks as much as possible. We've had pathologists die of prions. I've had colleagues come down with TB. We try and diminish the risks as much as possible. I've had some near misses myself, which are in the book. And you don't just go into this field unaware. Like, literally, the most harmless case can harm you.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned there was a chapter on animal deaths. Is there a particular animal? This is a question that I personally wanted to ask you, because I was thinking this when I was reading it. Is there an animal that you respect the most out there in South Africa, or anywhere for that matter?
The most dangerous animal of them all is the human mammal. I mean, we're bad news. I think we cause the most trouble.
Yes.
Most feared, I think, humans.
Yeah.
Although, look, I'm an honorary ranger myself. I'm in my book, Autopsies, about fauna and flora deaths in Africa. I've seen a lot of deaths due to all the cases that I mentioned in the book, from bees to ostriches to lion deaths. But I've seen many more cases of dogs killing people. Yeah. Most of my cases are from, like, the animal deaths are dog bites and maulings. So if a little dog this big can kill you, imagine what a leopard can do to you.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. You mentioned the most common injury is a broken heart.
Yeah. That's one of my lines, eh?
Hey?
That's one of my lines, eh?
Yeah. That hit me as well. The most common injury is a broken heart. And that must extend to things like love triangles, maybe sometimes a broken heart, the sense that losing your life partner, and then you find that, that other elderly person or that other partner doesn't last very long after that. Is there something that cuts you deep when, in a personal level, when you see that it's quite apparent that this person has died from a broken heart? Does it cut closer to the bone?
Well, I've been to death scenes where you find, like, a couple in what I call a chronic relationship.
Yeah. Dead.
Literally, the one dies, and then the other one finds their partner, and then they have this heart attack and they die. So you find, like, literally, they're both dead, and the other one has the heart attack. Like, it's a real thing. Like, we've seen this time and time again.
Sure.
So, like, that's why I had to put this stuff down, because it makes you philosophical and it needs to be communicated. So, look, none of us are getting out of this alive, and I believe we're all here. We're all here to walk each other home to the end of the road. And sense of humor is important. my book, the second one, the epilogue, I talk about understanding your time here on Earth and adopting a new center of gravity in this real time, real now. Like, I even kind of take down Elon Musk about going to Mars. You need to spend your earthly money and your earthly time on earthly problems right here, right now. I also talk about the machine of the world. Like, when you're young, you're a consumer. Then you work on the machine of the world. And then when you're old, you're a consumer once again. And I say, try work on the machine of the world as long as possible. I'm just a little cog in this machine. And you want to keep this machine well lubricated and running for everyone else around us. Help work on the machine of the world as long as possible. Some people want to destroy the machine of the world. But I just say, keep this machine of the world running. And it's about solving problems that you can solve, because there's problems that you cannot solve that's going to waste your time. So there's people with metaphysical problems and all these things. We're never going to solve these things. Thousands of people before us try to solve them to no avail. Let's just work on our earthly problems now, of which there are many.
Yeah, exactly. Try and make a difference, and then the fundamental question then is what can the individual do? And the individual, I think, especially now with social media, we can quite easily get caught up in propaganda and all these other, problems that we think that we can fix. But as an individual, the most influential thing a person can do is to try and influence, to the best of their ability, their immediate circle and surrounding, and then let that expand and let that grow, rather than being a social justice warrior for that cause or that thing, whatever. The chances of you actually influencing that are very, very small as an individual. But if you can, and then the people that are around you, they're just onlookers, and you spend your time trying to fix this grand problem, and that you forget about all the people that are around you that actually care about you, that you could have made a difference in their lives. That's an opportunity missed. Tell me, this is one of my favorite questions. I give these to all of my guests, and it's something that I ask myself to make sure that I keep challenging myself and my viewpoints on certain things. Is there anything you've changed your mind on recently?
Well, just connecting to your previous question about big things versus small things. Like, as an academic researcher, you don't want to work on like big oak trees. Like, you want to just do little things, and then before you know it, you've got a body of work. So you don't want to do stuff that's like, a lot of little things all add up. And you've got to find where your contribution lies, and you've got very special talents that only you can do. And you've got to look for the need and understand your time here and do what you can do. So, it's everyone wants the breakthrough, the big thing. Just start small, little things. Little things make big differences.
Yes.
Little changes. You could be a top cyclist. Just change that little gear there. Big difference. Little things make big differences.
Yeah. What have you changed your mind on recently?
That is a very good question, eh?
You can take your time with this one, because most people don't know straight away, because it is a bit of a left field question.
Yeah.
It can be relating to your career. It can be something from a philosophical standpoint. There could also be nothing that you've changed your mind on recently.
That is a very powerful question, eh? Sure, because every day I try to get as much data as possible before I make a decision. Like, the worst kind of bias is the I'm not biased bias. So I try, as a scientist, to keep my views out of it. I try and get as solid an argument and a theory as possible. And also, like, I've just recently attended these NRF awards, and there were like A-rated scientists from all over the world there. And the way these guys think and the way they operate is mind-blowing. These guys are on another level. These are the real scientists that are running like the country and the world. These are top minds. And to be in their presence and to see how they think, you cannot help but learn and yeah, so always, if you're the cleverest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yes,
That's
I
also,
love that. I love that.
So you should seek out happier people, wiser people, fitter people, and learn at their feet. I don't know it all. Really, there's a lot I still got to learn and know. I'm still on my own journey. There may be a third book.
I hope
It may be called Autopsy Turvy. It's quite a funny term. Because, I mean, we're all trying to make sense of this world, and our time here. So I think that's all I would.
Well, that's what this is about as well, from a selfish point of view for me with the podcast, It's about learning. It's about accepting the fact that I certainly don't know everything. I don't even profess to know a little bit. So I'd like to have people on who know more than me. And then hopefully by recording these conversations, there are people out there that can listen and be empowered by learning, even if it's just one thing from a 60, 70, 80-minute interview. So one of the things that you alluded to there, and you mentioned it in the book as well, as you got more experience, and you refer to this as an industry, not just as you as an individual, it's almost like the more experience you get, the more uncertain you get that you've got the correct answer. Whereas people that start out very early on, like early forensic pathologists, they're always dead certain that it's this, and this. Yet you would think it would be the opposite, but that's actually not the case, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's from Autopsy. So they want to impress their seniors, and they're more pushed and give a diagnosis, whereas when you get more experienced, you learn to doubt more. And our non-diagnosis rate, the more senior you become, is greater. You sign it off unascertainable at autopsy examination alone, because you realize there's so much stuff actually out there, and you learn to doubt. It's like these old guys that studied lions for years and years. When they start studying lions, they think they know it all. By the end of their career, they know nothing about lions.
Yeah. And those are actually the people that have done studies on that. The people that doubt themselves and their knowledge and their abilities the most are the people that actually know the most, and the ones that are so certain on a particular subject or theory are the ones that actually know the least, because I think it's that doubt that can be almost constructive in a way, where there's that constant hunger to learn more because you're doubting, and if you can channel that doubt in a constructive way, you power yourself to learning more and more, and that's an infinite game. It doesn't end.
Well, it's confidence versus competence. So many people are taken in by confidence. You're seduced by the charismatic person that's like, but are they competent?
Yeah.
And that is the key, I think. Like, can you trust this person? Who's your expert? We saw this during COVID. Like, can you trust this person? On what authority are they talking? Is this real news? Is this fake news? Is this noise? Can we trust this?
Yeah.
Confidence versus competence. That is what it comes down to. And how do you fact check it? And would you fly a plane with this person?
Yeah. Would you have that person? Would you put your life in that person's hands with confidence? Yeah. This has come full circle. I love this. What has you excited about the future? You've got these two wonderful books, which will draw people's attention to in the show notes as well. I'm going to attach the links where they can purchase the books and where they can find you on the different social media handles. But what has you excited?
Right, so it is a very powerful question. Like, what are you optimistic about? That is a very, very good question. Look, writing these books was like bone marrow coming out of myself.
Body, yeah.
So I'm a bit spent here at the moment. I must say I'm not as charismatic as I usually am. I'm usually much more charming, just for your viewers.
No, you've been fantastic.
The Smeagol-like character that speaks
humble.
before you. So, I think I need like a little bit of a break. Some downtime, because rest is important, as you know from training.
Yes.
You can't just train 24/7. Even in nature, you need seasons. And time, and remember, we've task-orientated versus time-orientated. When we were back in the day, like, we were task-orientated, like milk the cow, go harvest that. Now we're time-orientated people. So, and you can't quantify time. It's like the boss will take you down for loitering because like what is time? What is the task? Is it time oriented, task oriented? So things have changed. We're working much harder, I think, now than back in the day, like from primitive times.
Yes.
So you got to kind of get back to that circadian, ultradian rhythms, and you got to be re-energized. You can't force stuff in life. Also, you like as an artist, and things should develop organically and naturally. You can't force. If I forced this writing, you can read it. It won't mean anything to you. But if it just comes out of you naturally, then you know it's real.
I love that. I love how you framed being task-oriented versus time-oriented, and how we've changed and how we need to go back to being task-oriented. One of my favorite quotes to your point about seasons is that the trees never resist the seasons. And it sounds to me like you've put all this effort into this wonderful latest book for you, Risking Life or Death. And you now get to take a step back and soak it all in, appreciate what you've done, what you've harvested, and those are the moments in life that are also very, very necessary, because that's what reinvigorates for maybe the third book, or, you know, to bring back a new version of Ryan. Whereas now at the moment you're heading into this phase, which is still something to be excited about, you know, looking forward to some rest and relaxation, enjoying what you've done.
But the tree produces fruit once a year, and then it has to shut down. And then it will produce, hopefully, again. I cannot produce, even the ultra athlete. Sorry, I keep reverting back to sport here.
No, not at all. You're preaching to the choir.
There's seasons. You can't be on top form the entire time. You will burn out. So you need time, and it's cyclical, and you have to be mindful of this.
Ryan, thank you very much for taking the time to sit with me. As I say, very spontaneous, impromptu, and it was fantastic to meet you. Before we go, where can people find you? I'll attach it in the show notes, but where can people find you if they want to follow your journey?
Right, look, I'm very proud of my YouTube channel.
Yes.
So I've dropped about 20 or so videos, and they are like 2 minutes, so they're for short attention span. They're done well.
Nice. What's your YouTube channel? Do you know?
It's at African Forensic Pathologist, or the Ryan Blumenthal channel. Yeah, there's some very exciting videos there. And Instagram, profb_docmagic.
Okay.
They can follow me there. Yeah, beyond that would be a stalker.
Is it? I'm good. And then where can people find your books, man?
The books are international. Okay. So they're online. They're at all good bookstores.
Okay. So I'll include that all in the show notes for those of you that are listening. From a personal standpoint, I really enjoyed the books. I loved how you tied the mystery of death, really, and what you've seen, and how your life has been over the course of these, what did you say, 15,000 autopsies. And I love how you've tied it back into something that is relevant and applicable. So I definitely feel I've got more insight into what it is that you did and what you do. I've gathered some interesting stories and insights behind what happens in South Africa. But I've also got things of, okay, I've got little nuggets of wisdom out of this book that I can apply directly to my life. I know more about what you do in the industry, but I also know more about what I can do to become better for me. And I think that's what I really enjoyed, is how you cleverly figured out a way to communicate both those effectively. So well done. Congratulations. And you deserve whatever rest you decide to take.
This is a great honor. Thank you. Yeah, and it's serendipitous.
It is.
It really is.
Very cool, hey? Fantastic. Ryan, thanks very much. Safe travels and rest up.